Niagara Falls is a truly amazing sight. The power of the river is on full display as it crashes over the falls, showing how unstoppable nature can be. But just a short distance from the Falls Visitor Center, there's another example of the river's power. Here, you'll find the ruins of an old hydroelectric power station, destroyed by the same force of nature. Today, we're going to talk about the collapse of the Schoellkopf Power Station, one of the biggest energy disasters in history. Get ready for a story of ambition, destruction, and the lasting impact of this tragedy. Jacob Friedrich Schoellkopf was born in 1819 in the Kingdom of Württemberg, which is now part of southern Germany. At the age of 22, he moved to the United States, where he worked hard and made money in many different industries. In 1870, he bought the Frontier Mills in Buffalo, New York. Over the years, he bought more mills and grew his business. At the same time, a project was happening to the north of Buffalo, near Niagara Falls. The Niagara River offered a huge amount of power that could be used by industries in the area. Rivers have been used for hydroelectric power for thousands of years, and by the 1800s, many industries were beginning to grow. The plan was to build a canal that would collect water from the river before it reached the falls and then send it out farther downstream. The canal, though, was not lined, which allowed water to seep into the ground. This meant that the canal could be a major power source for the mills. However, the project ran into financial problems and was slowed down by the Civil War. By the time the canal was finished in the 1860s, it only had one customer, the Niagara Falls Canal Company, which went bankrupt in 1877. That's when Jacob Schoellkopf stepped in. He bought the bankrupt canal for about $71,000, which is worth a few $1,000,000 today. The canal also had a power plant, called Plan Number 1, which had been operating since 1874. But this plant didn't make electricity. Instead, it powered its customers using belt and drive shafts. Schoellkopf, eager to harness the power of the river, partnered with Charles Francis Brush, who had built the first dynamo at Niagara Falls. Together, they made improvements to the plant, increasing its output to about 1,800 horsepower. But that wasn't enough. The first plant operated until 1904, after which a second plant, producing 34,000 horsepower, took over. But even this was still not enough. Plans were made to build a third and final power station. However, Schoellkopf wouldn't live to see it finished. Died before it was completed. The third station was built in 3 sections, A, B, and between 1914 and 1924. It had 21 generators, which together produced 44,500 horsepower. The last section, 3C, was built in front of the old plant, making it the largest privately owned hydroelectric power station in the world at the time. But as the station grew, so did its needs. The canal no longer had enough space for the water needed. So, engineers built a tunnel to help move the water more effectively. Water passed through the tunnel, entered a penstock, and flowed toward turbines, where it turned the turbines to generate electricity. After that, the water was returned to the Niagara River just below the falls. The sides of the gorge behind the power station were walled off to stop water from leaking into the structure. The station had to be built very strong because the water pressure was so high. This pressure created the energy, but it also put a lot of stress on the building. Sadly, the structure wasn't strong enough, and that's when disaster struck. On June 7, 1956, workers at the Schoellkopf Power Station noticed cracks appearing in the wall at the back of the station. As the day went on, the cracks got bigger. Workers tried to stop the water from getting inside by placing sandbags, but by the afternoon, the cracks had grown so big that workers started leaving the building. By 5 p.m., large rocks from the bluff above the station began to fall onto the roof. Water rushed in through the new holes in the gorge wall, flooding the station. Parts of the building were washed away in just minutes. Over the next 10 minutes, 5 huge rocks, weighing around 120,000 tons, fell and crushed the southern part of the station. The plant was completely destroyed. One worker was killed by falling debris, and several others were injured. The collapse caused the station to completely stop producing power. The damage was more than $100 million, and the loss of 400,000 kilowatts of power affected the economy badly. To make up for the missing power, electricity was brought in from the Hydroelectric Power Commission of Ontario in Canada. But that wasn't enough. They also had to use power from a steam plant in Buffalo, New York, which was more expensive to run. Meanwhile, water continued to pour out from the broken southern section of the station. The collapse had damaged the lower part of the penstock for stations 3BS and 3C. Workers were able to close some of the gates, but they couldn't stop the flow of water completely. It wasn't until June 16th that the flow of water was finally stopped with the building of a cofferdam and the closing of gates in the pressure tunnel. Even then, some water kept flowing. Eventually, Station 3A was partially restored and began producing power again, but this was short-lived, and the plant was closed for good in the early 1960s. So, what caused the collapse? There are a couple of ideas. The most likely reason was the pressure from nearby construction work. Leading up to the collapse, the unlined canal had allowed water to seep into the banks, weakening the ground. Engineers had started working on a grout curtain behind the station in May 1956, which may have added more pressure on the already weak ground behind Section 3C, causing it to fail. Another possible reason was a minor earthquake that might have affected the rock behind the station, making it more likely to collapse. We may never know the exact cause, but what we do know is that the Schoellkopf Power Station, which had provided power for over 60 years, was destroyed. Today, not much remains of the site, as it was cleared to improve the view on the U.S. side of the Niagara River. It's a shame, though, because it could have been a great place for urban explorers. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you won't miss more exciting stories. Until